Batman and Robin number 6, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Patrick Gleason. We left off last issue with Damian being told by nobody to shoot some guy in the head that they were hunting, and the entire issue was also the backstory of how Bruce Wayne got mixed up with the Ducards back during his training days. This issue picks up, still with Damian, gun to the guy's head, and nobody's just philosophically going off on like, oh, true evil does not blah, blah, blah. So Damian, after a while, straight up, he pulls the trigger with the gun aimed at the guy's head. And when he realizes the shot doesn't fire because it's just not loaded, he goes off on nobody. He's like, I'm not here to play games. He's like, hey, I just need to make sure you're in for the cause. I actually have some questions I need to ask this guy, so we're just going to take him back to our place for some interrogation. So that goes on, and as he's about to knock out the guy, that little like forehead finger poke thing that we've seen over the past 2 issues, I think, nobody's like, okay, so if you do it right here, you can knock him out, okay, just right there as hard as you can. And he's like, oh, but I could kill him. And he's like, you won't. I have faith in you. I trust you. And he does it perfectly and knocks the guy out. And so Damian's obviously getting some trust points in him because he's willing to show him the stuff that Batman won't. So Batman gets a call from Alfred that they detected somebody that matches Damian's general build on one of the cameras outside of an embassy. Batman busts in and sees that everyone's been beaten but is still alive. And then we get the voiceover narration continuing on with what happened while he was training with the Ducards. And we just see a whole bunch of fighting montages, a bunch of science stuff. Ducards telling him, hey, look, get into the mind of your enemy, become one with them. That is the only way to blah, blah, blah. And we see that they're hunting this terrorist named Hassan, who is going around just senselessly killing people across the globe. And they're tracking him, and sometimes they completely lose his track. Sometimes they're right on his heels. But regardless, they've been hunting him for, I think it says years, or at least quite some time. And finally, they get him down to a hotel. They've got some lookout points on a hotel across the street. And Ducard makes his way over to the hotel where Hassan is staying, and he makes his way up to the room. And they're like, yes, we've called the international police. They are on their way. They will arrest him, and he will be brought to justice. And Bruce is like, cool. And then he gets over to the door, and Ducard's like, hey, Bruce, what is he doing? And he's like, well, he's standing by the door with a gun. And then Hassan just shoots him in the head and kills him. And Bruce is understandably not happy about this because that's not justice. That's killing people. And so they argue, and Bruce ends up storming out. And Ducard tells Morgan that Bruce Wayne is a loose end who has to be tied up. So we see, I think a couple days later, he's heading to the airport. And Morgan, via sniper post, takes a shot and shoots Bruce Wayne. But he was given just a little bit of warning because there was a glint of sunlight that showed Morgan's scope. So then we see what I assume is later that night, where Morgan is driving away, and Bruce just drops a cinder block through his driver's side window, busts through the window, starts beating the ever-loving hell out of Morgan, straight up saying how he's going to kill him. But then he stops after a second, and he drops Morgan in through Henry's skylight, and they're never seen again. And that's why Batman was, because he brought him that close to the point of killing. That's why he's so dangerous, because even though he had his moral code, he was this close to doing it. So GCPD arrives at the embassy, and Batman asks Gordon for 2 hours because this is a personal thing. Gordon gives him 1, and he's like, done. So then we go over to the Gotham Harbor, where nobody's interrogating the dude who has the human trafficking ring going on. And turns out he's not torturing him. Damian thought he was torturing him. Everyone thought he was torturing him. Turns out he's just using truth serum because, as it turns out, fear is not actually that good for getting the truth. Fear will just get an answer regardless of if they actually know anything. So he prefers, he's still trapping in hostage situation these people, but he uses chemicals and stuff instead of just straight fear. But then once he got everything he needs out of the guy, he starts dangling him over a vat of acid and starts lowering him in the same way he did with that Batman at the beginning. Damian, of course, not a huge fan on this because of the no killing for no particular reason rule. Like, that just seems a bit over the top, dunking in acid. So nobody, he throws a punch at nobody. Nobody seems to knock him out for a second. But Damian does have a little bit of an upper hand, and he activates the GPS signal on his Robin suit so that Batman has a trace on where they are. And he's driving as fast as he can in the Batmobile there. Meanwhile, nobody's like, come on, man. I did that whole trust thing. I thought we were cool. Why would you betray me for that dickwad Batman? And Damian's like, because he's my father, you idiot. Literal quote. And at that point, nobody's like, okay, hey, Batman, I'm assuming that this GPS signal thing allows you to hear what's going on as well, which is a bit of a leap, but regardless, it does. And he purposely says, the next noises you hear will be your son breaking. And then we just get repeated cracking noises followed by, like, grunts and, like, stifled screams. And we see Batman gritting his teeth more and more and more before finally on the final page he just screams out Damian. And that's where we leave off. I like this issue. I think it's fine. It's the weird portion where it had to split the time between the end of the Ducard story and the actual Damian bit. I think I would have preferred it be, because this shares it with the last issue that had half Ducard and then half Damian. I think I would have preferred it to be all one issue dedicated to Ducard and all one issue dedicated to Damian. Just because it doesn't feel like either of them get the particular development they really need. It's I don't know. It's the Ducard story feels cut short because it's like, oh, and then he killed a guy. And we're introduced to this guy on the same page where he's shot. So I'm like, okay, I guess that's crossing the line, but it doesn't really feel like it is. But that's also just because I don't have the last issue as present in my mind as I do this one. So overall, I just wish it would have been that. But it's still a very well-told story. Art is still fantastic. I do really like how he showed Damian how to do the forehead thing, because that's just that little touch where he really wanted to learn how to do it, and then nobody's the one who showed him. Just giving that little seed if he trusts him more. So I'm going to give this one a 7.5. I'm, of course, looking forward to seeing how we're going to wrap it up. And nobody, I mean, he's straight up breaking the bones of a 10-year-old kid. So I think we've established that he's a decent villain now. I'm willing to give him, he is a at least B-tier villain. So keep it up.